It was a hot summer night, as me and my roommate were cleaning out our place, trying to see if there was anything of value we could sell in order to keep up our diet of instant noodles and coffee. As I was digging through the old bags and crates of random junk and old knickknacks, something caught my eye. Underneath a pile of old gaming controllers and bags of clothes was a red box. What caught my attention about it was, despite being in the attic buried under boxes and bags, this box seemed brand new. No creases, dents, not even a speck of dust to be found. Out of pure curiosity, I opened the box, and what I found were 5 old VHS tapes. What confused me about them was, despite the box being in what seemed to be perfect condition, they were extremely dusty and rather beat up. They were all titled the same thing: Watch Our Tapes. Seeing as how neither me or my roommate had a VHS player, I was just going to leave them where they were. But for some strange reason, as if it had me under some kind of spell, I had the sudden urge to bring them down with me. So I did. My roommate saw me coming down the attic ladder, holding the bright box, and got pretty excited. "Hey, you found something worth some cash, huh?" he asked as I raised the ladder up. I shrugged and shook my head. "Nah, just some old VHSs. He looked at me with a face telling me I was being an idiot. "Well, why the hell did you bring him down with you? We can't even watch him," he said in confusion. Well, honestly, I have no clue. It's like they wanted me to grab them," I responded. He raised an eyebrow before laughing slightly. "Dude, you've been watching too many horror movies." I rolled my eyes and carried him to my room. Yeah, shut up," he laughed. "Hey man, if you get a phone call saying you got 7 days, don't say I didn't warn you," he yelled as he made his way downstairs. I headed to my room and threw the box up on my nightstand. I opened the box and started to examine the tapes closer, as I figured they were all tarnished and worn down, but what really piqued my curiosity was the tape on the VHS where the title was written. Next to the words was this strange symbol which I can only describe as, the occult. It looked like a crappy drawing of a stick figure with 2 lines across what would be the head and 1 across the torso. While this caught my interest for a few minutes, I eventually put the tapes back down and tried relaxing. But for some strange reason, my focus always went back to that shiny red box. It eventually dug into me so hard I decided to go out and buy an old VHS player from this crummy video store across from our apartment building. When I returned home, Chris has been sitting on the couch stoned and watching SpongeBob. "Hey man, where have you been?" he asked, pausing the TV. I showed him the VHS player and he laughed. "Tell me you didn't spend money to watch those tapes." I flipped him off and began setting it up. "Yep, that's exactly what I did," I responded, with Chris giving a small chuckle. After the VHS player was hooked up, I grabbed the tapes and put in tape number 1. It was nothing but a man smoking a cigar under a lamppost. That was it, for 4 minutes. It was boring, but what made me feel uneasy about it was whoever was recording. He was breathing very heavy and the camera shook slightly. The tape ended and me and Chris were stuck staring at each other. "Well, that was weird," he said, rubbing the back of his head. I agreed and proceeded to put the next tape. Now, if the first one was unsettling, this one was just straight up horrible. Once again, the man recording was breathing heavily and hiding behind a tree. He then pointed the camera towards a park with children running around. His breathing got even heavier and then began approaching the kids, before it suddenly ended. "Holy shit, that was messed up," I muttered. I looked over at Chris, who seemed to be getting a little worried. "Alright man, that's enough," he said in a shaky voice. I denied his request, due to my curiosity. "Hey man, if you don't want to watch, you can leave," I responded, as I put in the next tape. Chris stood up before slowly sitting back down. As I figured, he'd be too interested to not watch the rest. The tape played and it was disturbing as all hell. The man behind the camera and two other men in masks that looked to be made from deer skulls surrounded a large bag and all held long, jagged blades. Suddenly the bag moved, and all three men began to stab into it quite violently. Then it got real disturbing, because the bag began spilling out blood. The men just proceeded to stab it over and over and over and over for about 5 minutes straight. This caused Chris to vomit on our coffee table. Couldn't really blame him. At that point, he had enough and ran into the bathroom, probably to puke some more. On the other hand, I was just too curious to stop. So I popped in the fourth tape and... holy fuck. At first it was just black, until the lens cap was removed. And what was revealed was what I can only describe as if you threw Hannibal Lecter a birthday party. Entrails hung from the walls like party streams. Both fresh and dried blood was smeared all around like a Jackson Pollock painting. And that symbol that were on the tapes, painted in most likely blood on the wall. There was a table in the centre of a room with organs, hearts, kidneys and other insides circled around it. And in the centre of the table, held down by rope and shackles, was the man from tape 1. He was beaten badly. Bruises and cuts completely covered his body, and his eyes had been removed. Definitely not by any surgeon. The left one had been completely torn out of his skull, but the left was remained attached to the socket, just dangling down. I wanted to turn it off, but I was almost in a trance, and I couldn't tear my eyes away. Probably not the best way to describe it. As I was trying to keep my lunch down, the same masked men entered the room. This time joined by 4 other figures. 2 I could make out as female. The other 2 I couldn't be too sure about. They all circled the man, as they each picked up one of the still beating hearts at their feet. The one I assumed to be their leader, a man with a ram skull that had been carved into a mask, with one deer antler replacing the original curled horn, and was dressed in a dark red cloak, had begun reciting some sort of tomb or scripture in a language that I couldn't understand. But one part was said in English. It went, "The tainted blood spills for the pure to thrive." After finishing their speech, they lifted their cloaks, all pulling out blades of various shapes and sizes, all with that same symbol carved into the base of the blades. They began butchering the poor bastard, who thrived in pain, screaming for help. They began removing his limbs before tearing into his insides. The sickest part was, no matter what they did to the man, he was still alive throughout it all. It wasn't until they ripped the man's heart out that he finally stopped moving. Once the leader had removed the heart, they all held them up to the sky once again, chanting, "The tainted blood must spill," before biting deep into the hearts. That's when I finally had enough. I removed the tape and threw them all into the box before bringing them down to the basement and setting the little fuckers to flames. I didn't even bother with the 5th one. At least I tried to. After watching them burn to a crisp, I returned to my room, only to see the 5th tape sitting on my nightstand. It was smoking and crackling with some burn marks, but still intact. I lost my shit and began smashing it to pieces with a hammer till it was nothing more than powder. I stayed up all night watching it, making sure it didn't return again, but I eventually crashed due to lack of sleep and complete shock. Well, as I'm sure you could guess, I woke up in the morning to find the tape sitting on the VHS player. I came to the conclusion it would not go away until I watched it. So I did just that, and holy fuck, I wish I never had. The video started out normal, with a shot of Detroit. I suddenly came to the realization I knew it was Detroit, because the video was recorded on our street. The camera slowly turned and pointed at my fucking apartment building before zooming into our room, where I saw me. I looked at the timestamp on the video and it was It was 20 minutes before I went up into that attic.